Hello, everyone. Today, I want to share with you an emotional story about a woman who lost everything but found a miracle she never expected. A widow, lonely and isolated, was hired to teach 6 children in a struggling family. But what will happen when she not only teaches them lessons from books, but also lessons about love, sacrifice, and care that these children have lacked for so many years? Could she become the mother they long for? This story is not only about survival, but also a deeply moving journey of a woman rediscovering strength and love in circumstances that seemed impossible. Stay with me to explore this journey. Her story begins on a sad, rainy afternoon. She was a young woman who once had a happy family, with a loving husband and adorable children. But everything changed in just one night when an accident occurred, taking away her life partner and leaving her in a world full of darkness and coldness. Suddenly, she became a widow, with no one to share her joys, sorrows, or the lonely nights. The loss wasn't just the passing of her husband, but also the loss of a companion, a partner in every step of life. The months that followed passed in silence and solitude. Calls from friends and relatives no longer comforted her, but were awkward consolations that couldn't fill the void in her heart. She couldn't forget the memories of the past, the happy moments when he was by her side. Every time she saw the things he had touched, every time she sat at the dining table with only an empty chair, she felt as if she were sinking into an endless pain. Her world seemed to stop, and nothing had any meaning anymore. She no longer looked forward to anything, no longer had hope for the future. The days passed like that, and she lived in emotional numbness, a life where she could never find joy again. This feeling of loss was like a wound that would never heal, a wound so deep in her soul that she no longer knew what she was searching for, other than silence. But life does not stop with loss. While she continued to drown in her sorrow, the world outside kept turning. One day, in a moment of chance, she received a call from a family looking to hire a tutor for their children. This family was not like any other family she had known. The father of these children was a lonely man, living in a large but empty house, with 6 orphan children who lacked care and love. She didn't know much about this family, but the tutoring job seemed like a new opportunity for her to regain some stability in her life. At first, she thought she took this job simply to earn an income, to keep her life going. She didn't expect any major change. She stepped into the large house, which was nothing like the cozy homes she had dreamed of. The children looked at her with curious, yet distant eyes. They didn't have much hope for learning. They were too used to being left alone, with no one to care about their feelings or needs. Their father, a strict and cold man, simply told her, "Teach them something. I'm busy." She sat down with the children and began the first lessons. She realized that not only knowledge, but also something more important had to be taught to them: how to love, how to care for each other, how to feel the presence of family. These children lacked not only knowledge, but also affection. They were like orphans even when their parents were around. She felt a strange connection, an invisible bond she couldn't explain. Slowly, she began to notice that this job was not just about teaching, but was a journey of self-discovery, and more than that, a journey to help these children rediscover their faith in life, to find the love they had lost. Throughout the early lessons, she faced resistance from the children, who were too used to being neglected. They didn't understand why she wanted to teach them, didn't understand why she would spend time on children they had long considered unimportant. These lessons weren't easy, but she didn't give up. She persisted gently, and little by little, the children began to change. They started sharing stories, joys, and sometimes even sorrows they hadn't been able to express before. And it was in those stories that she realized not only did these children need care, but she was also seeking connection. She realized that this job was giving her a chance to find herself again. Although there wasn't an immediate change, she felt that things were slowly beginning to have meaning. She wasn't just teaching them knowledge, but also teaching them how to love, how to care, and share, things they had never known before. And one day, When she saw the first glimmer of faith in the eyes of one of the children, she knew that she was doing something right. She wasn't just a tutor, she was slowly becoming an important part of their lives. And perhaps she was also finding a new family, a family she never thought she would have again. This part of the story not only creates a strong emotional connection but also sparks curiosity about the next part of her journey. The events in this opening section, though not yet complete, are enough to hint at a significant transformation that she herself can't yet imagine. When she stepped into the house, everything seemed new and challenging. At first, all she saw were the children sitting there, silent, as if they had no hope left for the lessons she brought. The stillness in the large house overshadowed everything. No laughter of children, only the gloom and loneliness that couldn't be hidden, though she didn't want to. She couldn't help but feel the pain and abandonment in their eyes. They weren't the playful, energetic children she had once dreamed of. They were children with broken hearts, full of wounds, abandoned by the closest people. On her first day teaching, there was no greeting. The children didn't even look up when she entered. They just stared at their desks as if everything around them no longer mattered. Their father, a grim man with sorrowful eyes, handed her a list of subjects he wanted her to teach his children. He said little, didn't show emotion, just nodded and walked out, leaving her with 6 strange children she couldn't understand. She had thought the job would be easier, at least in the beginning. She thought all she had to do was give them basic lessons and teach them what they needed to know. But things didn't go as she expected. Every morning when she started the lesson, the children refused to cooperate. She tried to pull them into the lesson, but all she got were strange looks and silence. They didn't even listen to her. They secretly teased each other while she was speaking. She tried to be patient, but fatigue began to creep into her mind. Each day, when she entered the classroom, she felt the coldness, the rejection from the children, and each day, she felt like she was facing an invisible wall she couldn't break through. Still, she couldn't give up. Remembering the reasons that led her to take this job, she knew she couldn't leave. She wasn't just there to teach them, but also to bring warmth, care, and attention they lacked. She began to change her approach. Instead of focusing solely on teaching, she started telling them stories about life, about the hardships she had been through. She hoped that through these stories, they would understand that no one in this life can overcome difficulties alone, without help, without sharing and love. The early lessons were difficult, but she realized that only through this approach could they feel the affection she had for them. She wasn't just teaching them knowledge, she was teaching them how to love, how to share. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, she still felt like an outsider, unable to reach their hearts. The children still kept an invisible distance, and each day, the silence grew heavier. Sometimes, she wondered if there was anything more she could do. Could she find a way to connect with them? But then, one day, one of the children suddenly spoke up. She vividly remembered that moment when the youngest child, a boy named Tim, suddenly asked her, "Why are you here? Don't you have a family?" That question made her choke up. She answered that she too had lost her family, and now she only had her job as a teacher, but she always hoped that she could bring warmth to them, like a second family. Tim looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw a faint glimmer, as if the boy was starting to understand part of her story. Little by little, the children began to change. Not all of them immediately, but at least they no longer completely rejected her. The lessons began to have laughter and voices. However, this change didn't come from the lessons she gave, but from the way she started facing them. She was no longer a stranger, but a friend, a mother bringing love and limitless patience. Bit by bit, she felt the change in their behavior. The children started to share their thoughts, although still hesitant. They began to express fears, sorrows they had been carrying alone. She started to see smiles, though rare, but full of meaning. And even though she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, At least she had begun to see a glimmer of hope, a small sign that these children could find their faith in life, and perhaps, one day, they would see her not just as their teacher, but as a second mother they had longed for. The challenges were still there, but now she no longer felt alone. She knew she couldn't change everything overnight, but at least she had begun, and that was an important step forward. She continued to persevere, hoping that one day these children would understand that she would always be by their side, not just to teach, but to love and protect them like a real family. The lessons passed in silence, occasionally punctuated by small laughter from the children, but most of the time, she still felt as though she was facing an invisible wall. Despite her best efforts, the change in their attitude remained minimal. But something within her had started to change. She no longer just saw a group of stiff, love-deprived children. She saw in them wounds that couldn't be seen, pains buried deep beneath their hardened exterior, scars they could never speak of. And she, with all she had gone through in her life, began to understand that change couldn't happen in a day. It was a journey of patience, step by step. Day after day, her lessons were no longer just about teaching math, literature, or history. She began to focus more on building trust, not only with the children but also with herself. The lessons were no longer just about knowledge. They became lessons about confronting suffering, about seeing life in a new light, about strength in the face of adversity. She taught them that loss was a part of life, but it didn't define who we were. What mattered was how we faced it and overcame it. One day, after a tense lesson, when she was gathering her books to prepare to leave, she unexpectedly received a question from one of the children she never thought would open up. "Do you think we will always be alone?" The question came from a girl named Lily, the one who had always seemed the hardest to approach. Lily was the quietest child in the group, always avoiding her gaze, and seemed to never believe anything she taught. But that question, though simple, made her think deeply. She looked at Lily, whose eyes were filled with sadness, as if carrying a burden she didn't know how to share. She smiled gently and said, "No, Lily, we're not alone as long as we open up to each other." It was a moment that touched her heart, and perhaps it was also the moment that touched Lily's heart. She began to realize that it wasn't that they didn't want to change, but they didn't know where to start. In the days that followed, she no longer just taught them from books, but taught them how to connect, how to face sadness and fear. She was no longer a distant teacher, but a friend, a second mother they needed, even if they had never expressed it. One of the most notable changes came from the oldest child in the family, Sam. At first, Sam had always been the one on the outside. He didn't care about school, never talked to her or his siblings. But in the recent lessons, she noticed that Sam had begun to change. Every time she taught a lesson, he would ask insightful questions, share deep thoughts about life that she had never heard him express before. He began sharing stories of his life, about the hardships he had faced seeing his family fall apart. One day, when she asked Sam why he had changed, he told her, "You're the first person who didn't give up on us. You're teaching us not just to learn, but how to live." She felt that a miraculous change was happening in this family. This change didn't come from her teaching better or explaining things more clearly, but from the way she had started to understand and empathize with these children. She was no longer just a teacher with a duty to teach. She had become a mother, a sister, and a friend, all in one. She realized that the greatest change wasn't in them learning knowledge, but in them beginning to trust her, in the values she brought, and most importantly, in them starting to trust in themselves, believing that they could change, that they could overcome the suffering that had bound them for so many years. The bond between her and the children grew stronger. It wasn't because she was their teacher, but because she had become an inseparable part of their lives. This connection wasn't something grand or flashy, but rather the small axe swords of encouragement in times of disappointment, comforting hugs when they faced challenges. Little by little, she began to feel the emotional warmth she hadn't known she needed. She wasn't just teaching them, they were teaching her about unconditional love, about sacrifice, about the things she had lost over the years of living with pain. One afternoon, when the whole family was sitting together in the living room, Sam suddenly stood up and said, "Thank you for always being here with us. Even though our father can't be here forever, you've made us feel like we have a real family." It was in that moment that she knew the change hadn't just come from the children. It had come from her, too, from her patience, empathy, and the love she had given them. She was no longer an outsider. She had become an important part of this family, a mother they had never thought they would have. Looking back, she realized that the hardships in the early days weren't challenges, but stepping stones that allowed her and these children to find each other. She understood that transformation wasn't always quick or easy, but when it came, it would be strong and lasting. She wasn't just a teacher, she had helped them rediscover faith in life, in family, and in the boundless love that life could offer. Her story wasn't just about a journey of teaching and learning, but a journey of confronting the harsh trials life had thrown at her and this family. The days she spent teaching were not just about helping the children overcome academic difficulties, but about helping them heal from deep emotional wounds, the pains they couldn't express. She had done what few people could. She had made these children feel the unconditional love and care they so desperately needed. Yet, there was still one enormous challenge she hadn't foreseen, coming event that would change everything, not just the way she saw this family, but also the way she saw herself. Everything started to change on a rainy morning. She was preparing for class when she received a call from the children's father. He informed her that he was facing serious issues at work and might have to leave the family for an extended period. This was news that no one in this family had prepared for. The father was the only pillar, the only source of stability for these children. But now, he would have to leave, leaving the 6 children in the care of a widow who they still only considered their tutor. This sudden change left her confused, unsure of what to do next. She was no longer an outsider, but stepping into the father's role was a challenge she never imagined she would face. She didn't know if she could do it. She looked at the children and felt the fear creeping in. These children had already suffered so much, and now they had to face the fact that their father, the only one who could bring them stability, was leaving. At that moment, she knew she had to decide. Could she step into the role that the father had left, becoming the protector, the one to care for this family, not just physically but emotionally as well? The answer came from the children themselves. In the days following their father's departure, she began to notice significant changes in the way they treated her. They were no longer the resistant children, no longer distant like before. Instead, they started to open up, sharing their worries, their fears, and their hopes. They no longer stayed silent, but began talking about the future, about what they wanted in life. More importantly, they began to trust her. She wasn't just their teacher, she was their protector, guiding them through these difficult days. During those days, she also realized something important. Change didn't come from big gestures, but from small actions, simple yet meaningful gestures. The dinners she cooked for them were not just meals. They were family gatherings, opportunities to talk and share what was on their minds. She wasn't just caring for them physically, but also teaching them how to care, share, and build a loving environment. Every time one of the children struggled with their lessons, she didn't just teach them the material, she encouraged them to persevere, reminding them that failure wasn't the end, but a stepping stone to growth. Then, one day, when she thought everything was starting to settle, an unexpected challenge appeared. She received news from the school of one of the children that Sam, the oldest in the family, had been expelled due to an incident involving school violence. Sam had always been the most distant, always isolating himself. Despite her best efforts, she never realized how deeply the pain ran inside him. He didn't know how to deal with his emotions, how to love himself. Being expelled wasn't just a shock for Sam, but a huge challenge for her as well. She knew this was the moment she had to confront one of her greatest fears. Could she find the strength to save a child so deeply immersed in pain and despair? She couldn't leave Sam. No matter how hard it was, she knew she was the only one who could help him. She spent hours talking to Sam, listening to him share his pain, his past struggles, things he had never shared with anyone. She wasn't just a teacher. She was a friend, a mother who was there for him in his darkest moments. She kept encouraging him, reminding him that no matter how hard life got, there was always hope, always a way forward. Little by little, Sam began to change. He was no longer the quiet, angry child. He began to open up, confront his difficulties, and find ways to overcome them. Being expelled, though a huge shock to him, became a valuable lesson that he could use to grow. When Sam started returning to school, the other children in the family also began to change. They started learning to love each other more, to share their feelings, and to seek support from those around them. The dinner table conversations were no longer just about homework, but about life stories and the lessons each person in the family was learning. She was no longer an outsider. She had truly become an essential part of this family. The children were no longer the lonely ones. They had found support, love, and care from their family and from those around them. The turning point she never expected had come. She had not only helped these children overcome their challenges, but had also helped them rediscover their faith in life, in themselves. And more importantly, she had rediscovered her own faith in her ability, in the power of love and patience. She had become the mother they always needed and the protector of not just this family, but also of herself. As her story began to reach its conclusion, a sweet and hopeful feeling filled her heart. The children, once seemingly impossible to connect with, had now become dear friends, children she loved and cared for. The long journey was over, and perhaps she had found what she once thought she would never have again: a family. But, as we all know, family is not just about blood relations. It's about those who go through hardships together, who stand by each other in difficult times, and most importantly, those who are always ready to love and never give up. So, what allowed her to overcome all the challenges and achieve this? It was patience, selfless sacrifice, and, above all, the unconditional love she gave to these children. She was not just their teacher, she was their mother, their friend, and their guide through their pain, helping them become stronger people. The children were no longer lost. They were people who could stand on their own, who could love and care for others, and most importantly, love themselves. She had not only changed the lives of these children, but also changed her own. It had been a long time since she had felt true peace and happiness, and now she realized that happiness wasn't something far away. It wasn't a destination, but those everyday moments sitting at dinner with family, seeing the children laugh and share with each other. That was the happiness she had found after years of being lost. And you know, the miracle is, sometimes in life, we can't predict what will happen. Maybe you're in a difficult situation, feeling like you've lost everything. But when you open up, when you dare to love, to give, you will receive things you never expected. These children in this story are a clear proof of that. They opened their hearts, learned to love and care for each other. And most importantly, they realized that no matter how tough life gets, love and care can change everything. Does this story remind you of your own memories? Or maybe you've felt like these children before, abandoned, with no one around to care for and love you. But you know what? This story isn't just about them. It's also about you. Think about those you love, those you've helped, and especially those you can love and share with in the future. Could you take a moment to open your heart and help someone who needs your support? Just one word of encouragement, one small act can change someone's life. Think about yourself in this story. You can be the one who helps, the one who brings change to those around you. We all can be part of a family, whether it's a biological family, or one created by love and sharing. And when you give, you will receive. Love has no boundaries, and you can change not only your own life, but the lives of others as well. So, do you think each of us can create a miracle in someone else's life? Every small action, every word of encouragement, every act of love can make a huge difference. This story is a clear proof that no matter how harsh life may be, love and patience can heal all wounds, can soothe all pain. And if this story inspires you, leave a comment below this video. Do you think you can do something to help others in life? Have you ever gone through tough moments and found help from those around you? Please share with me and everyone in this community. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to continue joining me in these touching and meaningful stories. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will find inspiration and strength to change your life and the lives of those around you. See you in the next video.